The air in the Queen's apartment was thick with the quiet warmth of a well-loved home. A soft, yellowish glow from a single lamp spilled across the modest living room, illuminating a space where love was clearly more abundant than money. In one corner, a small collection of a child's toys was neatly organized in a worn wooden chest, while the refrigerator door served as a proud gallery for a series of crayon drawings depicting colorful, smiling stick figures. The faint, comforting scent of a simple, home-cooked dinner still lingered, a testament to the care that filled these walls. It was a sanctuary built not of wealth, but of resilience and affection. This was the world Claire Miller had painstakingly created for her son, a fortress of normalcy and peace after a storm she thought had long since passed. Returning from a grueling shift at the hospital, with 5-year-old Leo's small hand in hers, all she wanted was to lock the door and leave the world behind. That sense of security vanished the moment she saw it. The front door was slightly ajar, a silent violation of her sanctuary. A cold dread, sharp and immediate, seized her. Her maternal instinct, always simmering just below the surface, roared to life. Without a word, she gently pushed Leo behind her, her body becoming a shield. Her eyes darted around the dim hallway, searching for anything to defend them. They landed on a simple broom leaning against the wall. It was a pathetic weapon, but it was something. Grasping the smooth wooden handle, her knuckles white, she pushed the door open wider. She stepped inside, her heart hammering against her ribs with a frantic rhythm that filled the otherwise silent apartment. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every creak of the floorboards a prelude to danger as she moved cautiously toward the living room. There, sprawled on her faded floral couch, was a man. He was fast asleep, a stranger in the heart of her home. Even in his drunken slumber, he was a stark contradiction to his surroundings. His clothes, though creased and disheveled, were unmistakably expensive. Designer pants and scuffed leather shoes that cost more than her monthly rent. His usually perfect hair was a mess, and his face, even in repose, held a deep, unfamiliar sadness. For a moment, Claire was frozen by a mix of fear and confusion. This wasn't a typical burglar. But then her eyes fixed on the shirt he wore, a dark blue designer piece with a distinct pattern. The breath caught in her throat. She knew that shirt. It had belonged to Ethan, her ex-boyfriend, the father of her child, the man who had abandoned her. The sight of it was a punch to the gut. A ghost from a past she had fought with every fiber of her being to overcome. The broomstick suddenly felt useless in her hands. This was not a random act of violence, it was a targeted invasion, a reopening of a wound she believed had finally scarred over. The man on her couch wasn't just an intruder, he was a living, breathing symbol of her deepest betrayal, a physical embodiment of the life and the family that had rejected her and her son. All the pain, the humiliation, and the lonely nights she had endured came rushing back, a bitter flood threatening to drown her. Leo, sensing the shift in his mother's posture from protective to pained, tightened his grip on her leg, his wide, innocent eyes staring at the sleeping man who wore a piece of his father's history. The air grew heavy, charged with the weight of unspoken memories and the quiet hum of the refrigerator, its door covered in the joyful art of a boy who had never known the man his mother couldn't forget. The broom handle grew heavy, its purpose shifting from a weapon against a monster to a useless stick against a ghost. Claire's breath hitched, the sight of Ethan's shirt on this stranger a cruel twist of fate. Anger, cold and sharp, began to replace her fear. This wasn't just an intrusion, it was a desecration of the peace she had fought tooth and nail to build. She nudged the man's expensive shoe with the tip of her own worn sneaker, her voice low and tight, laced with the authority she used on unruly patients. "Wake up," she commanded, the words barely a whisper, but carrying the weight of years of suppressed pain. She would not be a victim in her own home, not again. The man stirred, a groggy murmur escaping his lips as he was pulled from the depths of his drunken sleep into the harsh reality of her living room. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and clouded with confusion. He blinked slowly, trying to make sense of his surroundings, the floral pattern of the couch, the soft lamplight, the stern face of the woman standing over him with a broom. None of it registered. He was Liam, a man accustomed to waking up in sterile, minimalist penthouses or luxurious hotel suites, not a place that felt so intensely, achingly like a home. He pushed himself up, his head pounding in protest. Where am I?" he slurred, his voice raspy. He looked from Claire's weary but resolute face to the small boy peeking out from behind her legs. The child's wide, curious eyes were a stark, sobering contrast to the haze in his own mind, a silent testament to how far he had strayed from any semblance of a normal life. Liam's memory slowly pieced itself together in jagged fragments. The argument with his father, the desperate need to escape, the vague idea of finding his brother Ethan's old apartment from years ago, a place he'd only been to once. "I think I got the wrong door," he mumbled, shame beginning to burn through the alcoholic fog. "I was looking for my brother's place, Ethan." The name hung in the small room, a toxic cloud that made the air feel thin and unbreathable. For Claire, hearing that name from this man's lips was a confirmation of her deepest dread. This wasn't a random mistake. This was the past, in a designer shirt and smelling of expensive whiskey, passed out on her couch, bringing all its broken promises and casual cruelty right back to her doorstep. Her first instinct was to scream, to dial 911 and have him removed, to erase his presence from her sanctuary. But as she looked at him, truly looked at him, she saw something beyond the privilege and the recklessness. In the slump of his shoulders and the genuine, desperate confusion in his eyes, she saw a profound loneliness. It was a look she knew intimately, one she had worn herself for countless nights after Ethan left, a hollowed-out expression that stared back at her from the bathroom mirror. This man wasn't a monster. He was just broken. He was a different branch of the same poison tree that had nearly destroyed her, and in that moment, her hardened anger softened into an unexpected, unwelcome flicker of empathy. The protector in her, the nurse, saw a wound that needed mending, not a threat that needed vanquishing. With a sigh that carried the exhaustion of her shift and the weight of her history, Claire lowered the broom. She leaned it back against the wall, the quiet click of wood on plaster signaling a truce. Leo, sensing the change in the atmosphere, relaxed his grip on her leg. "Stay there," she said softly to her son, before turning back to the disheveled man on her couch. Her voice was flat, devoid of warmth, but also stripped of its earlier hostility. "You look like you need coffee. Black." It wasn't a question or an offer of comfort, it was a statement of fact, a practical solution from a woman who solved problems for a living. She moved toward her small kitchen, her actions efficient and deliberate, leaving Liam sitting amidst the evidence of a life his family had tried to erase. It's astonishing how a single, simple act of grace can divert the course of a life, turning a moment of conflict into a chance for connection. Claire could have chosen anger, and no one would have blamed her. Instead, she chose compassion for a man who represented her deepest pain. If stories about the profound power of human kindness resonate with you, subscribing to our channel helps us continue to share these important reminders of who we can be at our best. Her decision to make that coffee wasn't just about sobering up a stranger. It was an affirmation of her own unbroken spirit, a refusal to let bitterness be the final author of her story. She was showing him a humanity that his world of wealth and power had seemingly forgotten how to practice. Liam watched her go, completely bewildered. He had braced himself for screaming, for threats, for the police. Kindness was the last thing he expected, and it disarmed him more effectively than any weapon could have. As the scent of brewing coffee filled the small apartment, he took in his surroundings with clearer eyes. He saw the crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator, each one a vibrant, joyful masterpiece. He saw the worn-out teddy bear sitting on a shelf, its fur loved away in patches. This wasn't just an apartment, it was a shrine to a child's happiness, built by a mother's fierce, unwavering love. A crushing wave of guilt washed over him, so potent it was nauseating. This was the family his brother had abandoned. This was the life Ethan had deemed unworthy. Claire returned with a steaming mug, placing it on the small end table without a word. The silence was heavy, filled with everything that was unsaid between them. Liam wrapped his hands around the warmth of the ceramic, the simple heat a grounding force in his chaotic state. "I am so sorry," he said, his voice finally clear and steady, "for all of it. For being here, for what my brother did. He was a fool." Claire simply nodded, her gaze fixed on a point just over his shoulder, unwilling to meet his eyes. She wasn't ready to absolve him or his family. Acknowledging the truth was one thing, healing the wound it had left was another entirely. She had done that work alone, and she wasn't about to let a stranger's apology unravel it. It was Leo who finally broke the tension. Children have a way of seeing past the complicated defenses of adults, cutting straight to the heart of things. He padded over from his spot by the door, his small, bare feet silent on the worn floorboards. He stopped a few feet from the couch and looked at Liam with an unblinking, innocent curiosity. "Are you my daddy's brother?" he asked, his voice small but clear. The question struck Liam with the force of a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. He looked at this beautiful, bright-eyed boy who should have been his nephew, who should have been part of his family's holiday photos and birthday parties, and his heart fractured. He was nothing more than a ghost, a representative of a man who was a biological fact but not a father. That simple, devastating question was the catalyst. In that moment, Liam's world tilted on its axis. His life, with its fast cars, meaningless parties, and portfolio of empty successes, suddenly seemed like a cheap, gaudy imitation of living. Here, in this humble queen's apartment, was something real. He saw in Claire's quiet resilience and Leo's innocent question a depth of meaning he had been desperately searching for in all the wrong places. This wasn't just about making amends for his brother's sins anymore. This was about him. It was a visceral, undeniable realization that he was standing at a crossroads, and the path he had been on led only to more emptiness. He knew, with a certainty that terrified and thrilled him, that he could not just walk out that door and return to his old life. He was at the precipice of a choice that would redefine his entire existence, a quiet turning point known only to him. These are the moments that shape us, the silent decisions that chart the course for the rest of our days. Your support in subscribing allows us to continue exploring these pivotal journeys of change, proving that redemption often begins not with a grand gesture, but with a single, heartfelt choice. Liam felt the pull of his past and the terrifying, hopeful call of a different future. He had to choose which man he was going to be, the one who walked away like his brother, or the one who found the courage to stay and face the wreckage. It was a choice between the comfort of his gilded cage and the difficult, uncertain path toward earning a place in this small, warm room. After a long silence, he finally found his voice, directing it not to Claire, but to the little boy who was still waiting for an answer. "Yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I am." He then looked up at Claire, his eyes pleading for understanding. He finished the coffee, the bitter liquid a fitting taste for the truth he had to swallow. He stood up, his movements slow and deliberate. He knew he had to leave, that his presence was a violation of this sacred space. But as he reached the door, he hesitated. He turned back, pulling a pen from his pocket and scribbling his number on a napkin from the coffee table. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you," he said, his voice low. "But if you ever need anything, anything at all, please, The choice is yours." He placed the napkin on the table and left, closing the door softly behind him, leaving Claire and Leo in a silence now filled with a new, terrifying possibility. The months that followed were a fragile, quiet dance of healing. Liam became a gentle, consistent presence in their lives, not as a replacement for a father, but as something new entirely. He fixed the leaky faucet, helped Leo with his first Lego spaceship, and sat with Claire on the couch after exhausting shifts, simply sharing the comfortable silence. Then, one evening, the fragile peace was shattered. The knock on the door wasn't Liam's soft, respectful tap. It was a hard, impatient banging that echoed the entitlement of the man on the other side. When Claire opened it, her blood ran cold. It was Ethan. He looked older, harder, and his eyes held the same casual cruelty she remembered. He pushed past her into the apartment, his expensive cologne a sickening invasion of her sanctuary. He didn't come with apologies. He came with demands, waving a legal document and talking about paternity rights and financial settlements, as if her son was a corporate asset to be negotiated. The confrontation that followed was ugly and raw, filling the small living room with years of unspoken bitterness. Ethan hurled accusations at Liam, calling him a traitor for siding with her, his voice dripping with condescension. He mocked the modest apartment, the simple life Liam had embraced, seeing it not as a choice but as a pathetic failure. He tried to wield his money like a weapon, offering Claire a check with enough zeros to make her head spin, telling her to take the money and disappear, to erase the inconvenient stain she and her son had left on their family's pristine reputation. But Liam didn't rise to the bait. He stood between Ethan and Claire, a silent, immovable wall. He was no longer the lost, drunken man who had stumbled through her door. He was a guardian, his calm a stark contrast to his brother's frantic, desperate rage. At the height of the argument, as Ethan's voice reached a fever pitch, Liam did something that broke the cycle of anger completely. He turned his back on his brother, walked over to where Leo was watching with wide, frightened eyes, and slowly knelt down, bringing himself to the boy's level. The shouting stopped. The entire world seemed to hold its breath. With a voice trembling with a profound, heartbreaking sincerity, he spoke directly to Leo. "I am so sorry," he whispered, his eyes welling with tears. "I am sorry for the family you were born into. I am sorry for the pain he caused," he said, nodding toward Ethan without looking at him. "And I'm sorry for every day you've had to be strong because the people who were supposed to protect you were weak." It was more than an apology. It was a confession, a sacred vow made in the heart of the home he now cherished. Liam then stood, his posture radiating a strength that had nothing to do with wealth or status. He finally faced his brother, his gaze clear and unwavering. "You had a chance at a family," he said, his voice quiet, but carrying the force of a tectonic shift. "You had a chance at this beautiful, brilliant boy and this incredible woman, and you threw it away for nothing. I won't make the same mistake." The words hung in the air, a final, irrevocable verdict. It wasn't an attack or a moment of triumph. It was a simple, powerful declaration of truth, a man choosing his soul over his bloodline. He was drawing a line in the sand, not between himself and his brother, but between the man he used to be and the man he was determined to become. He had found his purpose, and it was standing right here in this room. Seeing Liam's absolute resolve, Claire felt the last of her old fears dissolve. She stepped forward, placing her hand on Liam's arm, their fingers intertwining in a silent, unbreakable bond. She looked Ethan dead in the eye, her own voice free of anger, filled only with a pitying finality. "A father isn't a word on a birth certificate, Ethan. A father is the one who reads the bedtime story, who kisses the scraped knee, who shows up every single day." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle in the suffocating silence. "The only father Leo has ever known is the one who chose to stay." With that, she walked to the door and opened it, a quiet, definitive dismissal. She wasn't just kicking a man out of her apartment. She was closing the door on her past for good, ready to fully embrace the future they were building together. What a powerful testament to the idea that love is a choice we make every day. If you believe in that, please subscribe and help us share more stories that prove it. Defeated and hollow, Ethan left without another word. The click of the closing door sounding less like an end and more like a beginning. In the profound silence that followed, Claire, Liam and Leo stood as a single, unified front. The storm finally passed. The weeks that followed were not filled with grand romantic gestures, but with the quiet, steady work of building a life. Liam, with a lawyer's help, began the formal process of adoption. It was a day in a sterile courtroom, devoid of drama, that cemented their family. As the judge's gavel fell, it wasn't the sound of victory over Ethan, but the quiet affirmation of a truth they already knew in their hearts. Liam wasn't replacing a father. He was simply becoming the father Leo had always deserved, the one who had chosen to stay, to build, and to love without condition. He was giving the boy his name, a promise of permanence and protection that no amount of money could ever buy. Liam's transformation extended far beyond the walls of their Queen's apartment. He saw the world through Claire's eyes now, recognizing the invisible battles fought by countless single mothers every day. With his resources and her first-hand experience, they established the Second Story Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to providing housing, legal aid, and job training for women who had been left to fend for themselves. Claire, no longer just a nurse healing physical wounds, became its director, her quiet strength and deep empathy guiding the organization. She turned the deepest pain of her past into a beacon of hope for others, creating a sanctuary not unlike the one she had built for Leo, but on a much larger scale. It was a place where women could rewrite their own narratives, proving that a difficult chapter did not have to define the entire book of their lives. 5 years later, the soft glow of evening lights illuminated a newly opened community center, the latest and largest project of their foundation. Liam stood on the stage, not as the ruthless tech entrepreneur he once was, but as a proud husband and father, his speech filled with gratitude for the woman who had opened the right door by mistake. Claire stood beside him, her hand in his, a quiet smile on her face as she watched their now 10-year-old son, Leo, laughing with other children in the crowd. They were a family forged, not in a boardroom or a mansion, but in the crucible of a crisis. Their bond strengthened by shared purpose. The life Liam had found was richer and more meaningful than anything his millions had ever offered him, a testament to the profound truth that real wealth is measured in love, connection, and the positive impact you leave on the world. As the event wound down, a young woman, no older than 20, approached Claire, her hands wrapped protectively around a small baby bump. Her eyes filled with the same fear and uncertainty Claire remembered so well. Before she could even speak, Claire stepped forward and enveloped her in a warm, reassuring hug. "You're in the right place," she whispered, her voice carrying the gentle authority of someone who had walked the same path. It was a full-circle moment, the kindness she had once shown a lost stranger on her couch, now rippling outward, creating waves of change. It's a beautiful reminder that the families we choose can heal the world, one small act of kindness at a time. If you believe that too, please consider subscribing, so we can continue to bring these stories of hope to light.